Well, hello and welcome to HypnoGeeks. This is the 15th episode, and it's really for hypnotherapists and, well, anyone that's looking to enhance their knowledge about well-being, about the power of the mind, and anyone who's looking to enhance their therapeutic skills as well for their private practices or however they work with clinical hypnotherapy. Now, as a director of studies at the Northern College of Clinical Hypnotherapy, as a tutor, as a trainer, and as a therapist, I hear from so many people all the time that they are procrastinating. And this procrastination that they talk about is making them feel anxious and guilty and horrific, and it causes them to do all sorts of mad, crazy things. So, I wonder if you can relate to this. Are you one of those people who postpone things? Do you delay tasks? I'll do it later, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it at the weekend, I'll start it on Monday. Do you put off tasks or actions that perhaps need to be accomplished? Do you put off urgent activities in favor of maybe less critical tasks? I often find myself finding that the washing up's really, really important around tax return time. I'd rather do the washing up than my tax return. But it leads to worry, it leads to often a sense of guilt. It can certainly lead to stress and anxiety. And if you're looking at that massive stack of paperwork, it ain't going anywhere. So it's possible that it's just going to start to haunt you. And yeah, you might find the washing up more important, but it's still there looking at you when you've done the washing up. And you know what? You're not alone. You're not alone. It's something that I hear all the time because procrastination, well, it's really common. It's a common behavior that many people around the world experience to some extent. And research suggests that the majority of individuals engage in some kind of procrastination of some sort at some point in their lives. So it's not just you, it's everyone really. And studies have found that up to 20% of the adult population are what we call chronic procrastinators. I'm not quite sure I like labels, but I quite like a chronic procrastination label. Um, this is like the remaining population, of course, are going to be exhibiting some kind of procrastination tendencies in some circumstances. I think we all put off things that we don't want to do quite often. But procrastination affects all people of all ages, from all backgrounds, all occupations, and so it's got really widespread prevalence in society. And from the little research that I've done about it, it seems that it can stem from all sorts of different factors. Just not wanting to do it because you don't like doing it, fear of failure, perfectionism, lack of motivation, just a bit of poor time management skills, maybe, or avoidance of uncomfortable emotions that are associated with the task. Certainly for me, I'm quite a high functioning person, and I know that if it's something that doesn't interest me or inspire me, it very much gets to the put to the bottom of the list, or until there's a sense of urgency or panic, that means I absolutely have to do it. And then if I get frozen or paralysis about it, that can lead to all sorts of challenges. And I've developed some personal strategies that work really well to deal with that paralysis and to deal with that anxiety and to keep myself motivated and on top of things, because I run a business as well as teaching us, in a school, and running and making and creating podcasts and writing and doing all sorts of other things. And all of those things that are creative and fun for me, I love engaging with them. But there are things that I don't enjoy doing. And there are things that I get like paralysis around. I get really stuck, and I procrastinate and find that the washing up is more interesting. Well, I initially spotted my guest on today's episode on socials. I was having a bit of a scroll, and I absolutely loved his plain speaking, very much down to earth style of communication. And of course, He is a professional clinical hypnotherapist, but he specializes in helping clients make really quite transformational but lasting and positive changes in quite a variety of areas, including lots of different areas of mental health and well-being. But what I read was about his work on motivation, procrastination, and actually so much more. And I am delighted to welcome him on to this week's episode. Welcome, Craig Fookes. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're a real kind of like wealth of knowledge, particularly when it comes to things like procrastination and motivation and anxiety. It was a post that you'd put on about procrastination that really drew me in. But just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, what kind of work you're doing at the moment.
Okay, so my name's Craig Fookes. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, mindfulness instructor, and I've been now for approaching the decade. I became a hypnotherapist after a career change when I used to work in financial services previously, and I really wanted to give something back after a prolonged period that I'd had with mental health challenges myself, particularly in the areas of anxiety, which led me to become depressed, which led me to have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol and all manner of problems that people with mental health problems will face. And I had some great support from various different therapists over that chapter of my life. And to be honest, I thought that becoming a therapist would be a much better and more meaningful use of my work time than counting rich people's money for them. So I decided to exit my previous business and to retrain in initially hypnotherapy, but other therapeutic disciplines over the years as well. And really, my ambition was um, to be the therapist that I would have wanted when I started my
Mm.
personal therapy journey 15 or so years ago, and to think about what I needed at that time, because I'm sure there are people like me, and it is some of the things you referred to, kind of having the knowledge and the experience and the technical knowledge, if you want to call it that, to understand our psychology and our physiology and how our environment and our relationships affect our psychology and physiology, but also to have somebody that is quite straight and plain talking
Yeah.
to offer some accountability and a sounding board, and to kind of make peace with my own past and to talk about my experiences through the journey of recovery from mental health and how I see that as the work of the rest of my lifetime to manage my own health and physically and mentally. Simply because as a 41-year-old man, there lots of men don't come to therapy. When I first set up shop, I set up all my advertising and marketing around offering therapy service predominantly to those that identify as male and assign fit male at birth. And nobody came because even as recently as sort of 7 or 8 years ago, there's still quite a big stigma attached to men's mental health. That is pleasingly changing, and it's developing week on week, and I have more male clients. Um, so the my practice in the first few years was sort of almost exclusively female clients, which gave me, the need to learn about other areas that affected women and their psychology and different issues. So to try and give myself a much broader knowledge base to draw on. The I think the other thing that I try and do is to think about my own experience and to acknowledge that all of our individual sort of conscious experience, and get a bit woo-woo now,
Mm.
nobody else really knows what somebody else is thinking or how they feel or what it's like for that other person. But we all have a kind of an experience of our thoughts, of our subconscious, what it's like to have an inner narrative and an inner dialogue, what it feels like to feel lethargic or foggy in our thoughts, and how that affects our mood, how it affects our ability to motivate ourselves, why we might procrastinate, and to hopefully develop what I think is like a toolkit that everybody can carry around with them to help them to understand their own experience of their own psychology and physiology as they go about day-to-day life. And we started talking about, the reason we're talking now is around the topic of motivation versus procrastination. And the prevailing idea that I see in the topic of motivation is that we find ourselves in a comfort zone, and in order to get our long-term goals, whether that's losing weight, going to the gym, learning Mandarin, doing the degree, writing the book, starting the business, becoming a hypnotherapist, whatever the long-term kind of aspirational cerebral goal that we've got is that we find ourselves in a comfort zone, and we simply need to push ourselves out of a comfort zone towards that long-term
Hmm.
promised land of milk and honey and rainbows and unicorns. And yeah, there is a great deal of truth in that. That if you are in a comfort zone and it's your life is going well and you're enjoying good mental and physical health at that time, then you will need to give yourself a bit of a boost in order to do the difficult thing.
Yeah.
And from a neuroplasticity point of view, learning something new and doing something new is always challenging because you need to have the chemicals in your brain which make you feel agitated, which is the mechanism for learning and your brain going through that neuroplasticity change. Those chemicals are adrenaline and acetylcholine, and they make you feel that agitated sense. So it's always going to be difficult to learn something
Mm.
new and push yourself out of a comfort zone
Yeah.
towards long-term goals. If it is easy, if you can do the thing that you need motivation for and you don't find it difficult, then it isn't working. If you want to exercise and you don't find it a challenge, then that you're not really exercising. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Where I kind of made this kind of thought for myself is, when I'm thinking about my long-term goals, you kindly mentioned about my app earlier, is that I was assuming that I was in that comfort zone, that I was simply in a comfort zone, and all I needed to do was motivate myself out of that comfort zone to do the difficult thing,
Yeah.
the difficult work that I hadn't really got the experience to do. Is I hadn't done before. I didn't have the knowledge how to do, and it is quite exposing to put yourself. If you're sitting in a one-to-one session with a client, you can talk very, very openly, very calmly about your own experience. But when you start to record yourself and put it online for people to comment on, it's very
Yeah.
exposing. Um,
Very, very vulnerable,
yeah,
especially when it's something that involves emotion for you, or it's something that you've been through, your own experience.
yeah,
You kind of go, oh, please say something nice about this, because I'm
yeah.
sharing this from my heart. And
And, and,
it
and
can
people
feel
on
very
YouTube can be
exposing.
particularly vocal. So so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, am I actually in a comfort zone to start with? Because that's kind of where we're told that if we want something to achieve a long-term goal, if we're in a comfort zone, we must get out of it. I was like, well, I don't feel particularly comfortable at the prospect of having to do this.
Hmm.
So then I started to think about the human brain and how it's evolved over time, and what the human brain is actually doing, what it's actually achieving for us every single second of the day. It's processing 2 million pieces of information a second is the information or the number that I've read. It's
Yeah.
running 650 different types of chemical reactions within your body. It's working your cardiovascular system, digestion, immune system,
Mhm.
endocrine system, lymphatic systems, all of these different systems every single second from before you're born to the very second you die. And that's where its primary focus is. We could think of that as the brain's first gear of motivation. It wants you to be healthy and alive.
Yes.
And your brain has got lots of kind of volume that deals with all of those different systems and processes every single moment of your life. Once that is dealt with, that's the first gear of motivation. Your brain wants you to be alive. If you're very hungry, it will tell you. If you're very cold, it will tell you. If you're very hot, it will tell you. If you're
Hmm.
dehydrated, it will tell you. And if you're in pain, it will tell you. And those things would become overwhelmingly important. You'll be fantastically motivated to resolve those things before you think about your long-term goals. So once you get out of that first gear and you resolve your physical and physiological health as best as you possibly can, you then move into the second gear, which is all about comfort and discomfort. And potentially, or principally the avoidance of discomfort. Now, when you in the introduction, you were talking about doing things that are quite challenging, tax returns versus washing up.
Yeah.
Um, it may be for me when I was thinking about doing my app, I've got to do something I don't know how to do, and could be quite exposing. It's quite an investment of time and energy and effort, and it's
Mm.
a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's been known since the 60s that our brain has this thing in Carl Rogers' work, an organismistic valuing system. It's constantly like a set of old school weighing scales, weighing up the thing that you want to do versus the thing that you're going to do. And if something is difficult, then your brain's going to go, don't do that thing. It's really difficult. Do this thing instead. Sit on the sofa, find something on Netflix, put your pajamas on, open your phone, order something off Deliveroo.
Yeah, yeah.
Insight
And you
into
can
my life.
see that working in our physical movement as well. We end up with bad backs and bad necks and aching shoulders and sore knees because our body automatically goes to move and to pick things up and to stand up and to sit down. We automatically pick the easiest route, don't we? Pick
Yeah.
the easiest option, and that can end up, being quite imbalancing for us when it's repetitive.
Yeah, so that your brain is kind of allocating the amount of resources that you've got available to you at the time. So a tax return is a very kind of cerebrally intense thing to do. You're going to need a lot of information. It's something that you only do once a year. It's very kind of overwhelming. It's quite frightening to have to deal with Majesty's Revenue and Customs. And if you get it wrong, there's a kind of idea that scary people are going to come and knock on the door. So, around that time, your brain's going to go, well, instead of doing that, why don't you do washing up instead? There's still needs to be done. So there's that kind of valuing
Mm,
mechanism that's
mm,
going on.
mm.
And part of that, I think, is you need to have quite a lot of energy and esteem in reserve in order to do that thing.
I agree. Yeah.
And what happens is if you leave your tax return until the 30th of January, then it becomes really, really important. And the valuing system changes because if you don't do it at that point, then the pain of not doing it becomes greater than the pain of leaving it any longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that type of procrastination, the avoidance procrastination that so many of us experience, is the pain of not doing it is less painful for at time and
Mm,
of the pain of actually doing it. And it's not until that valuing system
mm,
changes on the inside where if I don't do this thing right now, then it's really going to cause me a much bigger problem. And then there's this huge surge of energy that we have. We go and do the tax return, and then we sit back afterwards and go, well, it wasn't really that bad anyway, was it? It's quite simple and straightforward once you get into it. And
mm,
we go, next year it's going to be even better. I'm going to do it as soon as the tax year rolls around. I'm going to have all my accounts and all my bookkeeping right ready to go. And then we're faced with the same problem again. The complexity and the energy that it takes to do the thing um, is greater than what we have in reserve at any given point. Does
yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It's interesting. I mean, I often say to people, I don't really believe that procrastination exists. I
Okay.
tend to believe that it's a limitation or it's an experience that you've had that's led you to believe
Yeah.
that it's really difficult, it's traumatic, it's dangerous. It isn't. I'm not sure that I'm really a believer in it. You have to get out of your comfort zone, and I think that's what really kind of went, ooh, somebody else, is thinking
Yeah.
along those lines
I,
as
I
well.
think I think procrastination is a label that it gets
Yeah.
chucked around for many different things. What I say to my clients is nothing happens for no reason. There is always a reason why your brain has decided to do something in the way that it has. You
Mm,
may not want to know what that reason is. You may not like what that reason is. That reason may be obscured from you, but there will be a legitimate protective reason that your brain has said, don't do that because it's going to be difficult. Now, that reason may be as a result of your esteem, your relationships, what the meaning is you draw from that situation, that how it might negatively impact you if it went wrong,
mm,
or
mm,
this, that, and the other. Maybe that you don't feel worthy or deserving deep down on the inside to have
mm.
the outcome or the product of whatever it is that you're putting off. So
I'm going to
if
share with
somebody,
you a little bit of a story from my own experience related to the tax return, and it's something that it's a story that it's going to reflect numerous other experiences that I've heard and things that I've experienced as a therapist as well, where you the discomfort, kind of imbalance, comfort, discomfort, pain, pleasure imbalance gets, you get to the point where, okay, you need to hand this tax return in now, it needs to be done by tomorrow or else, or it's getting to a point where I haven't been able to clean up my house for ages and it's got worse and worse and worse and worse, and now we know it's becoming a health hazard to me, my life, or I really need to get this work done, meet this goal, whatever it is. And at the last minute, you become so overwhelmed and so paralyzed. I like to use the word paralyzed because
mm,
it kind of reflects what I hear when people talk about procrastination. So overwhelmed and so procrastinized, so paralyzed, procrastinized, that's a new word, paralyzed that you just hit the fuck it button and
mm,
just think, fuck it, I'm not doing it. Just not going to do it. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to go drinking. I'm going to do anything else. But I just don't care. I do
mm,
not care about the outcome. You do really care quite
mm,
deeply, I think.
yeah,
But it just becomes like such a massive challenge, such a huge task,
yeah,
so incredibly all-encompassing or overwhelming that you almost go into self-destruct mode to get out of it. You create excuses, you start to move into a different way. I think
yeah.
it's interesting to dive into the intricate workings of the human brain a little bit more, when we're understanding this kind of
I'll explain
yeah.
how I approach and I'm pleased to use the F bomb before I did because the chances of me getting for an hour of talking about swearing is slim to none. So I'll talk about my approach to the fuck it button in a moment because it's something that I have a great deal of personal experience in. Um, so just to tidy up that last point. So our brain deals with our physical health first, then it is dealing with comfort versus discomfort, and it is
Yeah.
always going to lean towards comfort. Once we get to a state of comfort, we are then in the comfort zone and we can then progress towards our long-term goals. And for my personal experiences, I spent a long time of my life until very recently below the level of the comfort zone. And
Yeah.
I'll talk you through that in a moment. So my kind of take on why we
The
have
discomfort zone.
the discomfort zone. That's kind of our second gear. If we can get out of that second gear, we can find ourselves in the third gear, which is our comfort zone, and then we can push out of that. So we have an idea of who we should be in our mind at any time. And this sort of pinches a bit from Carl Rogers again. It pinches a bit from internal family systems, which I think is a brilliant tool to use alongside hypnotherapy. It's very hypnotic anyway. For the people listening that are hypnotherapists, I'd strongly recommend No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz. It's a book that it's changed my life personally and professionally. And it forms the basis of many conversations that I have with clients all the time. That when we think about Rogerian, the humanistic approach to counselling, it's something that clients find very easy to drop into and associate with quite a lot. And so the way I approach it with somebody is to say, if I asked you to describe yourself, who you are on a good day, not the best day of your life, but on a good day, what your friends, your colleagues would say about you. Just give me two or three words. And I know we're British and that you're going to be modest and you're not going to want to say something bragging or boastful, but this is a therapy session. You can say whatever you like and nobody's going to know. And generally, I'll get words along the lines of kind, caring, loving, and generous. They're quite common. I have things like I'm a good person, I'm a hardworking person, or I'm quite academic, or that would be something, an attribute that they hold on to. All perfectly understandable, laudable things to have in your life, and
Mhm.
you get instantly the idea of somebody who they should be on their best day. They are kind, caring, loving, and generous. So they're hardworking. They're a good person. They're an academic. They're whatever. Yeah. Now, if that person isn't those things for any reason whatsoever, we then get an insight into who they are, kind of what Carl Jung might call the alter ego. We get the shadow side, where they are when they're not that. So if somebody's hardworking, if they're not hardworking, then that they may take the message from that they're lazy or they're not productive or they're not good enough because they're not being as efficient or as effective as they might be. Now, if you've got an idea of who you should be positively when you're at your best, in my experience personally and professionally, that most of us have got a set of negative core beliefs, limiting beliefs as they might be called in NLP. And they'll generally be hung around a few different types of things. For those that are male, so I'm male at birth and identify as male, the big one, this comes from Brené Brown's kind of work on shame, is about being weak. That is absolute kryptonite to men. They don't want to be seen as that. They don't want to go anywhere near that. Coming to therapy means they're weak. Any emotion that isn't anger is weakness. And you're allowed to love your nan, your dog, and your football team, but other than that, you're not allowed to show love for anything else. And that's kind of what's drilled into to men and those that assign male. For female, this is Brené Brown's work. It's more subtle, it's more nuanced. It's about being perfect, not being a burden, not being able to be seen to be struggling, to have all of your shit wired tight all of the time. And that anything that touches on those nerves becomes like kryptonite for those that are female. And when we have we've got these two different versions of ourselves that are alive and well and breathing on the inside. On a good day, we find ourselves as good and hardworking or kind, caring, loving, and generous. And those are really positive traits that we find in ourselves and the world confers on us. And it's good to be those things. Now, if they get disturbed or shaken or we make a mistake and we're not those things, then we're right over here on the other side of
Yeah.
whatever our set of negative core beliefs are that are obscured from us and we don't want to go anywhere near. And if you imagine those two versions of ourselves, when they get far apart, when they're in conflict, then we have a third version of ourselves, which is our emotional state, which is either anxiety, it's depression, it's burnout, it's fatigue, it's procrastinating. And then if you sit in that third state for long enough, eventually that will morph into online shopping. It will morph into doom scrolling through socials. It will morph into comfort eating, into sexual behaviors, drinking, drugs, gambling, any of those kind of high impact, high dopamine activities, which provide that fuck it moment, to use your phrase, where
Yeah.
you then don't give a shit that you're not the person that you thought you want to be in the world. And you don't have to go anywhere near the person that you've become. You can just sit outside in a little protective bubble of fuck it, I'll just do what I want for a period of time. Now, in that bubble, if those behaviors are left unchecked, it starts with procrastination, it starts with avoidance because we're not the person we wanted to be, and we're this version of ourselves that we can't tolerate. For a period of time, we can sit and procrastinate. We can sit and doom scroll on our phone. We can sit and internet shop or any of those other types of behaviors. And in those moments, it feels good. That's why we do it. There's another reason why. Nobody's becoming addicted or using kale smoothie or crocheting or mindfulness coloring in books in order to achieve that state of something like what Carl Rogers would call congruence. It's always the big stuff
Mm.
that we're using, that stuff that changes our physiological state immediately. Chocolate is the most, of all the things that have approached, of all the people that have approached me for therapy over the years, for hypnotherapy,
Hmm.
chocolate is number one. I can't stop
Yeah.
eating chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's because it has this incredibly potent effect on our physiology very, very quickly. It makes us feel good. We get the dopamine kick from it. We get some oxytocin, maybe some serotonin. We get an increase in blood sugar. That will change our balance of insulin and cortisol, which will relieve some stress. And it tastes nice. It reminds us of childhood, and it reminds us for if we are good, we get a chocolate. And all very, very potent psychological and physiological kind of triggers for us. I'm not a big fan of the word trigger, but that's where we're at. So that idea of there being three different versions of ourselves on the inside, And
Yeah.
a kind of there is a conscious mind. There is an executive function, as it would be called in neurobiology. There is a bit of my brain that can hear these other voices playing out. There's a bit of my brain going, right, come on, Craig, you've got all these bright ideas, mate. Are you ever going to do this app? And there's another version of me going, oh, I'm really tired. I can't be bothered. What if it's shit? Nobody signs up to it. And then there's the middle version that goes, oh, do you know what, Craig? Just laugh it off. Just go and watch some telly. Find something on find something to eat on Deliveroo and just chill out for a bit. Do it tomorrow. You've done enough work for today.
Mhm.
There is those three different versions of Craig on the inside that I can have almost like a two-way conversation with, or that they certainly can have a one-way conversation with me. And depending on who's prevailing at any given time, determines what I do. Now,
Yeah.
for me, therapist, once somebody gets that conceptually, in going through a hypnotherapy session, we can take somebody to kind of a place of relaxation and ask them to visualize who they are on their best day, to see them as a third party, as an external person. And often that's a really pleasurable, pleasant experience to be, because then somebody that may be struggling with self-esteem can see themselves as other people might see them. They can
Absolutely.
see them in a positive light. And oftentimes people would say, "Oh, that person's really happy. They're glowing. They're wearing really smart clothes. They've got the things that they want in life." And like that is the person that you can become. That person's waiting for you in the future. Now, if you ask that person to come back a little bit towards you to the here and now, that person will support you. It may be that that version of you is giving you a lot of pressure because you're not quite where you could be. And
Mhm.
it can often be a very relieving effect for my clients to know that there is the future for them. There is the version of them that they can grow into and become with a bit of elbow grease. And then from that, we'd go to meet the kind of the other version of them, the shadow version or the alter ego, the one that's really downtrodden or is struggling with
Mm.
those core beliefs of not being good enough or not being worthy, not being a victim of life or being weak or whatever else. And they'll
Mhm.
see
Mhm.
kind of the truth of that there is this version of on the inside that is really struggling.
Yeah.
And it's for them as they actually are, the consciousness, if you want to call it that, the soul, the self, the spirit, the
Yeah.
executive function, to actually really embrace that version of themselves, all the trauma that they've experienced,
Yeah.
the fact that this version of them does feel like that. And then the third part is to go and meet the fuck it version, the protective part, the bit that says just sit on the sofa and drink beer and eat
Mm.
Deliveroo or doom scroll on your phone. And that version is there to protect. It's to protect that kind of alter ego, downtrodden version of ourselves, and it's to block it out. It's to block out the pain of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the three parts of it, and it really resonates with my own experience of therapeutic intervention that worked for me. I very much was in the fuck it button space for a
Mm,
number of years, and nearly died as a result of that.
mm,
And I went through recovery, and I went to rehab, and I did all of the program, but I didn't really know how to live as a happy, healthy, drug-free, sober, if you like to use that word. I didn't know how to live as a free, happy
mm,
person. And I was constantly haunted by the guilt and the negative. And I was very aware of my shadow aspects, because I had seen the destruction and the darkness and the horrible things that I had
mm,
done and felt dreadful about it. And my therapist used parts therapy with me, which is how we refer to it on our training at the Northern College.
mm,
We do parts therapy as a part of our diploma course, and parts therapy. She took me to reconnect with, or to get to know again, the part of me that knew how to live happy, healthy, joyous, free,
mm.
be a light, the things that I wanted to be, that blueprint of the person that I wanted to become.
Yeah.
I felt so disconnected from that part of me. I felt really stuck, really trapped in that negative space. And she introduced her to Amanda from the future and looked at Amanda's world in a visualization. What did it look like? What sort of activities did Amanda do in the future? And we went to Amanda's world, and Amanda was happier and healthier and funnier, and was doing did singing, and was using her voice to help people, and was doing all sorts of different things. And up until I'd had that session, I could not see a future.
Mm.
I was really stuck in that oh, I'm a horrible person, fuck it. Oh, I'm a horrible person, fuck
Mm.
it. Oh, I can't do this. It's not for me. I don't know. And the fuck it for me sometimes meant I wanted to check out as well, of life. It was
Mm.
a really, really dark place to exist in between that kind of no man's land almost of those spaces. And just seeing that dimension in my mind gave me something to feel like this was potentially achievable for me. I can
Mm.
do that. And they were really simple things like listening to music that I like and singing along, having a dance around my living room, having a bit of a disco in the kitchen, and doing just reconnecting with things that gave me a sense of joy, happiness, movement, um, and peace as well
Mm.
within me. And that part of me was called joy. And my name is Amanda Joy, but I was kind of, for a long time I was just Meh. Meh. What's your name? Meh. Because that's
Mm.
how I felt. And then I became Amanda, and then I became Amanda Joy. And it was because I had that an intervention in
Mm.
my life where I was really able to see all of the dimensions of me, love all of the dimensions of me, reflect on that. The dark stuff has actually really brought some real beautiful dimensions of light into
Yeah.
my world, and there's that kind of loveliness as a part.
I think that the messages that we have on that kind of dark side, if we want to use it, that the shadow side, the alter ego, they actually create who we become on the outside world. That if you feel, and those messages go in from most likely before you can even remember, they come in childhood, and they can go in very subtly, very nuanced way. It doesn't have to be malicious, although for lots of people, sadly, that is as a result of neglect and abuse, but it doesn't have to be. Just you
No,
can
not
latch
at
onto
all.
one negative message from your childhood, and it will form a negative idea of yourself. And then from that negative idea, then we try and bury that, we try and hide that from ourselves, hide that from the world, and we'll be the opposite of that on the outside. So if we feel
And I
like we,
think we can end up with multiple dimensions of those
oh yeah,
parts
yeah,
of us that are protective,
yeah,
that are helping us to feel good with the chocolate, that are giving us the extra gin and tonic on a Friday tea time,
mm,
that are causing us to have fish and chips on a weekend instead of creating healthy foods or healthy
mm,
ways of living and
yeah.
being, that
But
give us that feeling of security and safety.
yeah, there's the tone of each though. We've got the ideal, we've got the logical, we've got the rational, we've got the actual sense of who we are deep down on the inside, the bit we obscure from us, and then we've got the protective, what ends up, if you amplify it, ends up being self-destructive, self-abusive, but it really is intending to be the fuck it moment and to get you out of the torment of being pulled in opposite directions. So then I took that a little bit one stage further. So you've talked about it there, and in my life, that you've got who you can be at your very, very best. So at my very, very best is, I've run a marathon, I've climbed Kilimanjaro, I've run a business of this is my second professional career. Those big moments of happiness and joy and achievement in my life, right? And hopefully most people listening will have half a dozen of those, 10 of those in their entire lifetime if they're really lucky, first off, and if they work hard for them, right? So there is a version of Craig that's done all those things, and some people go, that's quite impressive. If you think I'm trying to impress you or be boastful or bragging, hang on a second, because hang on to your hats, it gets a bit. So there's a Craig that has done those types of things. And if we think of that him as kind of at the penthouse of the top of a tower block, we'll say that's level 10, 10 out of 10, living your best life,
Hmm.
Craig, right? That version of Craig has existed. There's also a version of Craig that existed in the basement of that tower block. Acute mental health problems, suicidal, abusing alcohol, abusing drugs, abusing his body in I don't know, I've had a pretty good go at most things. And now that both of those people, they are entirely different people. There is a transformation. The guy that was living in the basement, tormented and drunk and out of his face, is not the same guy that can run a marathon. But they are both me, but just not at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, so if we think of who I can be in my potential as being 10 out of 10, and then who I am as a result of mental health problems is what we might commonly call addiction. I don't believe in the word addiction. I find it
I'm the
horrible and
same.
shameful. But,
Definitely moving
but
away
when
from pain.
yeah, when the fuck it moment has just
Yeah.
gone a bit too awry.
Hmm.
Um, and then we can imagine then in our imaginary tower block, I've got it here on my whiteboard, but for those that are watching, but those that might be listening, that I think our comfort zone, was to come back to that idea of the three gears, I think our comfort zone exists at about level 6 of
Yeah.
our tower block. Now, if I ask someone how they are out of 10, ask them to give me a number out of 10. Most people, in my anecdotal experience of this, if I said, how are you now? Give me a number out of 10, how well you're doing, and people would go, oh, I don't know, about 6. So, 6 is our comfort zone. That's our target.
Hmm.
And I think that what we really need is a much more effective way to think about how we are actually feeling and doing in our life at any given moment. So then what I do is this. I say to somebody, right, okay, so you're about a 6, 7 out of 10 right now. So next I'm going to ask you to tell me, yes or no, do you feel energized? Do you feel like you've got enough energy to get through the rest of the day without feeling kind of overwhelmingly tired? If they say no, I say, right, knock a point off. So we go from 6 down to 5. And I say, right, just think about how easy it is for you to concentrate and focus now. If I gave you a relatively complex task to do that's within your skill set, would you find it easy to concentrate? Or would you be picking up your phone every couple of minutes, looking out the window, picking your nose, whatever it might be? And if they say no, then I'll say, right, knock another point off because clearly you're not as cognitively, there isn't as much cognitive availability capacity to you at that time.
Hmm.
This is where we move on to talk about motivation, because I don't like the word motivation. I'll talk about that in a minute. I say, if I gave you that complex task that's within your skill set to do, but is going to be quite complex and demanding for you, how much enthusiasm would you have to get that done? If it's would you have enthusiasm to get that done? And if they haven't got energy and concentration, generally the answer would be no, because you haven't got the energy and kind of the mental capacity to do that. So if it's a no, knock another point off. So we've gone from 6 down to 4 already.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, how healthy do you feel right now? Do you feel well nourished, well rested? You got any aches and pains that are noticeable, like digestive stuff? How well do you feel overall? Do you feel full of vitality, or do you feel a bit groggy and a bit kind of sluggish and a bit, aches and pains, whatever else? Well, if I'm honest, I do. Shoulders are aching. I feel a bit tense, a bit, you know, digestion isn't great. Whatever it might be. Okay, we'll knock another point off then. And then I say, realistically, you may have got, relationships are going well, work might be all right, might be a few quid in the bank, but have you got any problems in your life, whatever they might be? It might be that the boiler's on the way out, or you've got to ring the garage to get the car serviced or whatever else. But have you got any problems in your life that are bothering you to the point where they keep cropping up in your mind? You go, well, yeah, but who hasn't got problems? Okay, right. Well, if you've got something that's popping up in your mind constantly, then knock another point off.
Hmm.
So we go from a place of, yeah, I'm 6 out of 10 happy, but realistically, I don't think we spend a lot of our time in that comfort zone because if we don't feel energized, we don't feel like we've got a lot of concentration, we don't feel like we've got a lot of enthusiasm, don't feel maybe particularly well, or we've got problems that are bothering us, we're actually kind of not in a comfort zone at all. We're much lower down.
Yeah.
And I think the target for us, if we've got a long-term goal with something that we want to do with our life from that logical, rational future version of ourselves, then that version that's communicating to us on the inside thinks that we are in a comfort zone, thinks that we are up there at that level
Hmm.
constantly and continuously. But for many of us, particularly if we've had mental health challenges or we've had trauma in our life or we've challenges with addiction or we struggle with our self-esteem or we experience chronic fatigue, to get to a comfort zone is a job of work on its own.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and that we have in our society nowadays, and I saw a lot of it in lockdown before we started recording today, we talked about lockdown,
Mm.
um, that if we are not constantly busy and productive and learning Mandarin or doing salsa classes or baking banana bread or doing Joe Wick's PE lessons or whatever, if we're not in a constant and perpetual state of busyness and productiveness and taking a selfie of ourselves to put on social
Doing it
media at
all.
the same time, then somehow there is something wrong with us, that
That's right.
we are procrastinating. When in fact, we're not. The first thing that we may be doing when we are so-called procrastinating is resting, because human beings have a legitimate and fundamental need to rest in addition to sleep. We're
Yeah.
not designed to be running at 100 miles an hour, 24 hours a day. We're meant to
Yeah.
work for 8, rest for 8, sleep for 8. That's the kind of the premise of how we're designed. But now
I
we're
think
born.
boredom is quite a good thing as well. That
Yeah.
it's boredom can be painful for people, but I think I worked with a mum a number of years ago, and she was like on a Monday the kids have got rugby, and on a Tuesday they've got scouts, and on a Wednesday they've got computer classes, on a Thursday they've got arts and this that and the other, and she said my son's, and every day of the week there was some event, there was something happening, and school and homework and loads of stuff. And every weekend they were off having a lovely life. What an incredible blessing to be able to have all of those dimensions in your life. But her kids were suffering from anxiety. And she was
Mhm.
like, why are my kids suffering from anxiety? And I'm like, when do they ever get bored?
Mhm.
Like they need a day, at least a day, to just be bored, have absolutely nothing to do. But I want to hear, Mum, I'm bored. I'm bored. Because boredom, I
Mhm.
think, is actually really important for us to have a
I think
time of
for
nothing.
children, yeah, I think for children, absolutely, to encourage creativity. A lot, when I work with weight management clients, lots of people will say to me in very hushed tones, "Do you know what, Craig? Now you've kind of said about the three different versions of myself. I think one of the reasons why I might eat chocolate is I might be bored." And I'm like,
Mm,
right, okay. So what does it mean to be bored as an adult? It's a much more complicated emotional experience, I think, because first off, you've got the pressure of, well, I shouldn't be bored because I've got all of this stuff available to me 24/7 that I should be enjoying.
yeah,
If you are bored and you're on your own, then that might mean that you're lonely. And
that's right.
once you get under the lid of that, that's a very different emotion as well.
Mm,
If you are bored and you are living with a significant other and children or parents or whatever else, that's an even more complicated emotional state, because it probably means you're feeling a bit disconnected
mm,
from the people around you.
mm,
Um,
mm.
then if you've got that feeling of disconnection and you've got the kind of lethargy that comes up with boredom, then you've got depersonalization, lack of motivation, lethargy, then I would be thinking more along the lines, if you're not bored, you're burnt out.
Yeah.
Um, and that's an entirely different phenomenon on its own.
Mhm,
If
mhm,
you're
mhm.
procrastinating because you're burnt out, you're not procrastinating at all, you're burnt out.
You're knackered.
Yeah. And that doesn't, and we end up with that kind of feeling of clinging on to the bottom rung, or that we're just being on the hamster wheel just long enough in order to fall out at the weekend and collapse into a heap on the sofa.
Yeah.
That isn't procrastinating. A lot of what I hear in terms of procrastinating, people feel low motivation, disconnected from others around them. Their esteem starts to be affected, their motivation, they become less and less productive, and there's tiredness that isn't resolved by sleep. Well, all of that stuff is indicators of burnout and fatigue. That isn't
Yeah.
procrastinating.
No. And I think that's what's really interesting, isn't it? It's like we were saying at the beginning, procrastination is a label that we give to lots of different things, and it's usually used to beat yourself up with, oh, I'm procrastinating. Well,
Hmm.
actually, are you? Or do you have some kind of, like we were talking about, some limiting beliefs? Are you? Or have you had some experiences that have caused you to feel kind of quite restricted in what you're doing or limited in some way? Are you absolutely just exhausted? Do you
Hmm.
just need to have a rest? Is there fatigue? Is there burnout? Because I think a lot of people are on that hamster wheel all day, every day, go, 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 go. and they're continuing to push through with burnout constantly. So they're not in their comfort zone ever, are they?
Yeah. No,
They're definitely in the
in
in
my
the
in my tower block.
yeah, then they're heading for the basement.
Yeah, they are,
Time to
and
get off the
I really
elevator.
believe that.
Yeah, I
Yep,
agree.
I think there's an elevator down and there's a set of stairs going back up. It's very difficult to climb back up each level from the basement. The other thing I see, and it really does, grind my gears to use the modern phrase, is that lots of coaching and personal development tools are being offered and presented as if they are mental health recovery tools. Now, I'm a big fan of mindfulness and kind of
Yeah,
visualization.
me too.
And all that type of stuff. It's great and it's wonderful and it has a place. Positive affirmations, vision boards, gratitude practice, all of that,
Sure.
fantastic, right? But those are not mental health tools. They're not physiological tools. If somebody finds themselves, in my analogy, in the basement, go and say, have you tried manifestation? Have you tried practicing gratitude for the food in your fridge? No, fuck off, right? Because those things do not work for people that are in the throes of depression or in the throes of a panic
Absolutely.
attack. Um, they are there. If in my kind of tower block analogy, if you find
Mm,
yourself having dropped out of your comfort zone to level 5 out of 10, and you need a little lift, a little boost to remind yourself of the wonders of life and how great it is to have oxygen in your lungs and all that sort of stuff, that may be the thing that lifts you back up that extra
absolutely.
one level.
Yeah.
But if somebody's, in the throes of depression, they haven't left the house in 5 days, they haven't got out of bed for three, and they're laying in bed, they haven't showered for 2 days, you don't plonk them in front of the mirror and go, why don't you tell yourself that you love yourself? Because that person right then doesn't. They are kind of in despair and they are so far into it that that just wouldn't help.
Yeah.
It,
And
it
I have all these people who say fake it till you make it.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a lovely idea, but if I feel ugly and I tell myself in the mirror that I am beautiful, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, in my inner voice, I'm going, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, and I'm actually just making myself feel even worse. Yeah, it's bullshit, isn't it?
I think, well, no, I think it is bullshit, but I also think it's now, it's becoming toxic
Yeah.
because there,
It's
one,
almost narcissistic, I think.
yeah,
Narcissistic wellness practices. Uh,
if you are struggling with your mental health
mm,
in terms of anxiety, in terms of depression, in terms of developmental trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, or
mhm.
substance abuse disorder, or ADHD, or any kind of mental health presentation that is so common nowadays.
Yeah,
And people go on TikTok and they say, right, improve your mental health by just writing down three things that you're grateful for today. That doesn't do anything to help somebody's mental health. It may help somebody's emotional well-being if they're enjoying good mental health, but our emotional well-being for somebody in good mental health who's
yeah,
having a bad day isn't the same as somebody that's having a mental health crisis.
absolutely.
And it is becoming toxic to the point of dangerous.
Yeah,
Because that person that's having a mental health crisis, that's functioning in life, going, right, okay, well, I found this course online, how to improve your mental health and manifestation. Right, I'll just write down all these things that I want in my life, and I'll sit and manifest really, really hard until they happen. That isn't going to do anything to that person. They'll just, it may make them worse. It may make them realize how far away that they are, how deep into their basement that they are at that time.
yeah. I worked with somebody who was talking about how they'd felt quite low, really low mood. They'd had moments of thinking about like having suicidal ideation. They weren't quite planning it, but they were definitely having moods and thoughts of it, fleeting thoughts of it. And they'd gone to see the doctor. The doctor that said they didn't want to have antidepressants, and the doctor had put them on a waiting list for counselling. And while they were on a waiting list for counselling, they were offered an introduction to mindfulness course. And I was like, oh, that's great. I love that NHS are offering mindfulness. That's brilliant. The introduction to mindfulness told them to become really aware of their emotions, really aware of their feelings, to really listen to that inner dialogue. That inner dialogue was a really dark inner dialogue. That those inner emotions were really heavy and
Mm.
really unhelpful. And it put them off mindfulness forever. Not doing
Mm.
mindfulness, never again, made me feel awful. And I was like, well, yeah, of course it's going to. You're focusing your attention and your own awareness on the negative stuff.
Yeah, and to not and for somebody that's having suicidal ideation to focus and become aware of the depth and the breadth of that, to do that unsupervised is incredibly risky.
Dodgy as, and to just do a bit of I'm grateful for sausages and sunshines and unicorns is not really gonna it's
No.
not gonna overcome that,
Yeah.
is it? So how do you work with people who are down there? How do you work with people who are realistically not in that comfort zone? They're heading down towards the basement. What do you
We,
do with not motivation?
yeah, it's to try and get to the way I describe it is, to be completely objective and to observe the situation as it actually is, not what we
Yeah,
want it to be, not how it should be, not how it would be if only has happened or that person treated me different. It's to get to a state of complete objectivity with your own reality. Yeah. That we have those three different voices. We have the three different narratives. We have how we want it to be, the idealized, the future version of events. We've got this meaning side. These events in my life have meant that people treat me badly, or I'm unlucky, or I'm weak, or I'm
yeah,
fat, or I'm ugly, or I'm pathetic, I'm useless, I'm not capable, I can't look after myself. All of that kind of negative core belief sits on that side of the coin. And then we've got the fuck it button, how
yeah,
we protect ourselves against not being where we should be and the reality of our situation. So the first thing I do is kind of that tower block technique. How do you feel right now? And they go, oh, 6 out of 7. But there's these other things going on. But realistically, that puts you about a 2 or a 3. And that can be quite jarring for people to go, well, yeah, I suppose if I'm honest, I'm sitting here in your therapy chair, Craig, so things can't be going too great for me. Is that accepting of the start point. And if you think about lots of 12-step programs, lots of recovery programs, it always starts in the same kind of thing. Whilst I wouldn't necessarily agree with the wording of the first of the 12 steps, it is, you are where you are. Um, and you've got to kind of take that on board fully. There's the idea of the dark night of the soul. There is the intervention, or there's hitting rock bottom.
rock
Is
bottom.
you've got
Yeah,
to, in order to start the journey, you have to start it from the start point. That you can't
absolutely.
start it from 6 paces down the line. So I always say to people, right, for weight management clients, for example, they are aware that they are overweight, and the outcome that they want is to lose weight, to feel more happy and comfortable, and to be healthier, and to be able to have a greater choice of clothes. You don't just become, right, I'm aware that there's something going on with my weight and I need to lose weight. There is a journey that you go on. So you're
Mm.
aware of the problem. Then the next thing you must do is understand it. It hasn't fallen out of the sky. There is a reason that your body is responding to food and stress and your physiology in this way.
Mm.
And it is for you as an individual to go on that journey to understand it. Now, I can support you on that journey and help and provide you with information, and we can do some hypnotherapy, we can do this, that, and the other. But that journey is one that you must do inwardly on your own. I can guide you on it,
Yeah.
but you must understand it for yourself. That I don't know why I eat the things that I do, or I drink the way that I do. That will not help you. You go, well, I just don't know why, Craig. Can't you just hypnotize me? No, is what I say to clients. I don't.
Absolutely.
There are lots of hypnotherapists. There may be some watching that say, I can hypnotize you to X, Y, Z. For those people, then they can't. They're offering something. They're making false promises. The client is doing the work, and we enable it. We
I
facilitate.
tend to find that those kinds of approaches have a temporary fix.
Yeah,
They kind of get people through like a 2 or a 3 week period, and then they regress back.
yeah,
It's not really a regression, but it's called a
yeah.
regression, isn't it? Or you've fallen off the wagon or whatever it is you want to talk about. But I completely agree that if you
Mm,
don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you're never gonna be able to
no.
break the back of that unhealthy behavior.
Yeah. So once somebody's understood it fully and
Yeah.
completely and observe it, the reality of the situation, I
Mm.
eat because I'm bored. And boredom to me means that I feel lonely, and that means I feel disconnected. And that reminds me of when I was growing up and this XYZ happened.
That's right.
For somebody to be able to paint that story for themselves and to hold it out in front of them as if they're looking at a painting in an art gallery or watching it as a film play out in their mind, then that gives them the chance, and it is the chance to manage and regulate that themselves to change their behavior. And
Yeah.
as we're talking about at the beginning, in order to change the behavior, you must go through the pain of changing it. You've got to unwire your brain from the old pattern to put in place the new pattern.
That's right.
And you can do a bit of that in the hypnotherapy chair, but there's always has to be a bit out in the real world. I always say to my clients, like, in here is the theory, out there is the practice.
Yeah. I think what hypnotherapy does is it creates a space where we can compassionately inquire
Mm,
about what is at the root of this, what's
mm,
really going on, where are we really at? I think we've got some amazing tools that can really help us to do that.
yeah.
And then I think once we've recognized where we're at, it is when it comes to things like internal conflict, where we've got different dimensions of ourselves pulling in the opposite directions, we can work with what's going on with that part. Where
Mm,
did that come into existence? What experiences or traumas or difficulties or what lie have I have I heard that that's become part of my belief system that is pulling me in a direction that is not serving my life, that's not fulfilling
mm,
me, and working with those inner conflicts. And then for me, what really helped was just having that vision of a future me that I actually did like, that I did want
yeah.
to become, that did feel good for me. That kind of gave me an energy and a belief and some hope, and a desire to live and a desire to do the work, and it really kept me sane when I was having to work out how to like do like adult life stuff.
That the loss of that future self or losing connection with that future self is dangerous, I think,
Mm,
because if you become trapped in that loop between
mm,
the kind of the reality of your negative core beliefs
mm.
and the what we in our conversation calling the fuck
And the
it
fuck
button,
it button.
you'll get trapped in a feedback loop of it because the
Mm,
fuck it button will work for a period of time. It will take you out of that situation.
mm,
And then you'll be straight back into the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment and the
mm,
self-recrimination that happens as a
mm.
result of the behavior of the fuck it button.
Yeah,
So if you lose contact with the future version of yourself, the person that you have the potential to grow into, that's too far into the future, then you're just in this feedback loop. And I've been there, and that's when you end up in the basement, and it is
yeah.
the lights go out in the basement, the rats start coming in, it starts filling up with, and you are in trouble.
Yeah, I've partied down in that basement myself
Mm,
as well, and I think one of the things that also can really help you get out of that basement is to recognize things like, am I safe? Do I feel safe?
mm,
Do I know myself? And am I meeting my own needs? Am I being supported by people? Do I feel love? Can I feel love? Am I able to be loved? Will I let
mm,
people love me? Am I loving others? Do I know who I am in this
mm,
world? Do I fit into my gang, my tribe, my community? Have I got some kind of a purpose? Do I have a sense of self-worth? And
mm.
also, I think that's where hypnotherapy can come in and really very holistically draw on all of those dimensions and go, okay, well, we can help you to move towards this. We can help you to harness this emotional state, and we can look at this dimension of your life, because now we have an understanding of where you're at. We can start
Mm.
moving you back up again. Tell me a little bit about what you were saying about motivation, because I would like to just explore that point a little bit further with you. Because
Yeah,
I don't
I
believe
believe
in
that,
motivation.
yeah, I don't like the word motivation because I believe that we are fantastically motivated at all times. That if we weren't motivated at all times, then our brain would just stop breathing. It wouldn't run our cardiovascular system. It wouldn't run our immune system. It's in this constant state of fighting the environment to stay alive, right? What we in our modern language talk about motivation is motivation to do long-term goals, long-term difficult things. Whether for me it's running a marathon or climbing Kilimanjaro, starting a business, whatever it might be, long-term, cerebral, human, difficult, logical, conscious, cognitive things to do. Um, if you are struggling with anxiety or depression, your brain is fantastically motivated in trying to resolve whatever that problem is. If you are unwell, it will fire up your immune system and motivate your immune system to resolve
Absolutely.
that issue. If you are starving hungry or you're freezing cold, your brain will put you in a an incredible state of motivation to resolve those issues.
Hmm.
Once we get out of that gear of motivation, we then come into the comfort discomfort gear. Now, lots of people that will come to see us as hypnotherapists are in a state of discomfort. They just don't know what that is. Now,
Mm.
it may be to do, commonly, the things I see are very low self-esteem as a result of childhood trauma, chronic fatigue and burnout as a result of the incredible pressure on people's lives, and lots of people with very poor diets because they just don't have the time and energy and effort and money to cook decent, whole, healthy food. Um, People working shifts that disrupt their sleep. There's lots of these challenges that we overlook in our society that have a big impact on somebody's physiological well-being, and that we completely disregard them. We go, right, well, you're working shifts and you don't go to the gym 4 times a week. What's wrong with you? You're just not, you're clearly procrastinating. And it just does people a massive disservice.
Yeah.
So the word motivation and the other word that can get in the bin is positivity. That can get in the bin. When I come to
Put
power,
some words in the bin today.
yeah, the idea when people are procrastinating as a result of their mental health or their fatigue or their burnout, and they say, oh, I just need to be more positive. And then they list off the problems and challenges that they've got in their health, in their relationships, in their financial position, in their, things going on with their kids, things going on with their parents. Go, I just need to be more positive. I'll sit there and go, about what? Which bit of this do you need to be more positive about? What it would be really useful to do is to be really realistic about the limitations that are placed on your time for your external responsibilities and commitments, and be a bit kinder, a bit more patient with yourself as to what can realistically be achieved in the next 8 sessions that you've booked with me. That might be a bit more, that's a positive thing to do
Mhm.
rather than to
Mhm.
look for the silver lining in every cloud, because not every cloud has a silver lining. Some things are just shit. And
Yeah.
if we approach them as that and go, right, this thing is shit. What are my options in order to deal with it? That's a really positive thing to do. But to go, oh, I need to be positive about this, chin up, keep calm and carry on, well, that can get in the bin. That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, I think sometimes the gift of life is the shit. When we're in that we're in the darkest place and we feel like we're just surrounded by shit and we're covered in it. It's that is the best place to grow from, isn't it? That's what we do with seeds.
Where mushrooms grow.
Yeah, we want to, and it is not an easy process to move up and out of the
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
But yeah, I think just being positive, yeah, it's quite narcissistic, isn't it? I did some work in some call centers, and on the walls were like these amazing slogans about being positive and thinking positive and doing positive, but they were paying people an absolute pittance. They were working incredibly long hours. They were dealing with really snotty customers, and they were being under massive amount of pressure to achieve certain tasks. Otherwise, they would be fired. So all of their kind of like Maslow's hierarchy needs stuff was all being shook about, but they were told to be positive.
Mm,
You're not positive enough. You've got a negative mindset. And I was like, get me out of here.
mm,
Oh, I wasn't there very long. But to go in as a well-being practitioner into that environment, I was like, take them slogans off the wall because that's just mean. That
mm,
you can't say to someone be positive when they're hungry, when they're angry, when they're tired, when they're under pressure, when they're living in perpetual fear of losing their income and being thrown into a place of poverty and possibly even
mm.
homelessness next week. No.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Where's the
super
positivity in
refreshing,
that?
super refreshing to speak with you about this, Craig. I absolutely loved the conversation. I could probably talk to you for another hour, and possibly even longer. But tell us before we finish just a little bit about your MindWorks app, because you are currently developing this incredible app. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So my kind of journey through my mental health started off looking at anxiety. I then spent a huge amount of time thinking about motivation and procrastination. And I was
Yeah.
probably using that as a tool for procrastination, like researching motivation and procrastination. While I'm doing that, I don't have to do any proper work. Um, and then I realized that I wasn't procrastinating at all. I was burnt out as a result of, having a big client base and working as hard as we all need to work hard in order to make a living and whatever else. That my problem wasn't really about procrastinating or motivated. I was motivated to do the thing all the time. There was this block and this barrier that was stopping me doing that, and that was to do with my physiological health. Um, and then all this wonderful stuff that I'd researched, and all of it is relevant to everyone because of this idea of the tower block and the comfort zone, and that we can be 10 out of 10 happy, but we've all got the potential to find ourselves in the basement, that we all need to be looking after our psychological, emotional well-being proactively all of the time. In the same way as that we try and eat our 5 fruit veg a day, and the same way as we need to drink 2 litres of water, and the same as we need to do half an hour of exercise, we all need to be looking after our mental health as well. It's not a given that we'll enjoy good mental health for the rest of our lives, even if you've enjoyed that to your life to date. And for me personally, a big part of looking after your mental health is actually learning how the mind works, hence the name, The Mind Works with Craig. Because a lot of it, what we're told, is utter bullshit. What motivates us isn't the long achievement of long-term goal. What really motivates us is what happens if we don't. Now, if you have got to stop smoking, for example, this is just a common one that people come to hypnotherapy about. If
Mhm.
you're a hypnotherapist that is trying to get people to stop smoking because just think of all the money that they'll save, and that they'll be able to have that, they'll be able to take the kids to Disney World and they'll have a long, happy retirement running around with their grandchildren, that doesn't do it. What does it, if you want to stop your clients from smoking, is to take them forward in time to where they're laying in their hospital bed on machines, wheezing and in agony. That will do it every single time. We are motivated by the avoidance of discomfort, not the pursuit of long-term goals. Um, so the bringing those types of things to mind, letting people know that it is possible to access a state of neuroplasticity through meditation, through breath work, in order to help to reinforce positive behaviors and get rid of old negative behaviors. And it's studied in science now that the first thing about improving your mental health is actually getting some proper science and proper knowledge about what is going on with your brain, so you avoid the I don't know why I think like this, because there is a reason why. And it can be very empowering, very therapeutic, and life-changing to just simply go, oh, that's why that happens. Your subconscious brain is plugged in directly to your eyes and your ears. You'll hear the things that your brain is programmed to look for.
Mm.
So if you're currently low down in your tower block and you think you're a piece of shit, you'll find your biases will be tuned in to looking for evidence that you're a piece of shit, and looking for people that will treat you that way. But
Mhm.
if you feel better about yourself, you'll go into environments, you'll actively seek out environments, situations, relationships with people that will support that idea of you. So
Yeah.
knowing things like that and sharing this knowledge, I think, is as important as one-to-one therapy. The other reason is that one-to-one therapy is a significant investment nowadays, and the reality is lots of people are struggling financially. And I
Right,
think we
hold it.
we all, as therapists, have a responsibility, if we want to remain therapists, to go to our clients in a way that we can help them, rather than just going, oh, it's X number of pounds an hour. Oh, you haven't got that money. All right, we'll see you later then. That's not really what I signed up to do. Is to sign up to help people, and
Mm.
I've now got to think of a different way to reach more people in a way that still helps.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your
My
time
absolute pleasure. Thank
and
you.
sharing all your goodies with us. I'm definitely going to be looking out for your app when it comes out. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. And I'll pop all your links and everything so people can stalk you on socials
I'll be
and
happy to.
jump on your website and find all you what you're doing and get in touch with you if they want to work with you or if they want to find out more. But it's been so informative. Really enlightening. I have said what the fook a few times in my mind. Sorry, I couldn't resist it. I
Do
just
you know,
absolutely loved
I've
it.
never heard that before.
I bet you haven't.
In all my 41 years, nobody's ever made that connection.
It's been an amazing episode. Thank you so much for being on it. I really appreciate
Okay.
it. And thanks for listening.
Cheers.